Well, good morning again, friends. Welcome, one and all. Thanks for joining us for worship again today. My name is Pastor Ian Boley, for anyone who doesn't know me, and on behalf of myself and Pastor Bob Miller, it's great to be here with you. Thanks again, whether you're here in person or whether you're watching from afar today or at another time. Today, as we mentioned, is the second Sunday of Advent, and we have just lit the candle of peace. Last week, we lit the candle of hope, and we continue our anticipation of the arrival of the Christ child in the world once more, as God reveals God's self in creation, as God reveals what always has been and always will be through Christ. And during Advent, we're sharing in a series about sacred Christmas traditions. Last week, Pastor Bob talked about the long and hope-filled tradition of decorating. This week, we look at another wonderful tradition, and that is the holy practice of gathering. Gathering with one another, gathering with our families and friends and loved ones in all the ways in which we do that. Advent and Christmas is perhaps the time of year that we're most intentional about gathering together with our loved ones. Of course, we gather with people all over for all sorts of reasons throughout the year. At family functions, with groups of friends, for various meals around the table, or right here in church on Sunday morning. But this gathering takes on a special significance at certain times. Of course, days like Easter, Thanksgiving, or even leisure days like the 4th of July or Memorial Day or Labor Day. Birthdays, anniversaries, and of course, around Christmas time. December, it's often the busiest month of the year. Our calendars are filled with parties, dinners, Advent tea celebrations, church services, and finally, Christmas and New Year's celebrations. What is it that makes these gatherings so sacred? Aside from perhaps the obvious answer that we are celebrating the presence of Christ in the world, what else is it? What is it about this practice that makes it feel so sacred? Why are these gatherings so important, so traditional, so historic, so human? It's something we've done together since the beginning of the Christian movement, since the beginning of the time of Jesus. But more than that, it's something that people have been doing since the beginning of time. Well, there are several reasons for it. There are several things we could point to that make these gatherings sacred. We could talk about the movement of the Holy Spirit. We could talk about how we connect more deeply with our loved ones and more deeply with God, which is a huge part of it. I have another theory to add to those that I want to explore today. I've got a couple of examples to share about this theory. So, we're going to do some reading today, a little bit of reading. We're going to talk about some children's books, specifically some children's fantasy books that honor this long tradition of gathering together at sacred and non-sacred times. So the first example is it's a bit of an obscure book series. It's called Redwall. I see a picture of the cover here. Is anyone familiar with these books by any chance? Has anyone ever read Redwall books before? All right, we got one out here. Dave Spieth mentioned that he's read them before as well. So this is a children's series from the late 80s and 90s. It's by a British author named Brian Jacques. There were some books in the 2000s as well, but the well-known and popular ones are from the late 80s and 90s. It's a children's fantasy in the style of like a Chronicles of Narnia or The Secret of NIMH or Watership Down or something like that. It's about, well, mice and other woodland creatures living together in and around a place called Redwall Abbey. It's about the adventures and trials that they go through, the challenges, villains that they face, and so on. But one of the ongoing themes of these books is the theme of gathering together. So we have some artwork here based on the books. You see some characters sharing some tea. You've got a couple mice there. You've got a badger, and I don't know if you can quite see it, but you've also got a mole there right in between, right in the middle of everybody. These characters are always sharing meals, having tea, eating delicious sounding food, and cooking and celebrating together. And you got another image here. More mice getting together, preparing food. They celebrate in large groups and small groups at all different times of the year. And another major feature of the books, one of the favorite things of people who read them, is how the author describes the food that they eat together. So I'm going to share just a brief passage from this first Redwall book. This passage is 2 slides. If you can't read it, don't worry. I'm going to read it for you. You can just relax and listen. Just indulge me for a moment. Brother Alf remarked that Friar Hugo had excelled himself, as course after course was brought to the table. Tender freshwater shrimp garnished with cream and rose leaves, deviled barley pearls in acorn puree, apple and carrot chews, marinated cabbage stalks steeped in creamed white turnip with nutmeg. You'll notice these are all vegetables they're talking about so far. But a chorus of oohs and ahs greeted the arrival of 6 mice pushing a big trolley. It was the grayling. Wreaths of aromatic steam drifted around Cavern Hole. The fish had been baked to perfection. Friar Hugo entered with a slight swagger added to his ungainly waddle. He swept off his chef's cap with his tail and announced in a somewhat pompous squeak, "The Lord Abbot, honored guests from Mossflower area and members of the Abbey, I wish to present my pièce de résistance, grayling à la Redwall." And here's the second half of this passage. Polite but eager applause rippled round as Hugo sliced the fish and placed the first steaming portion onto a platter. With suitable dignity, he presented it to the abbot, who thanked him graciously. All eyes were on Father Abbot. He took a dainty fork loaded precariously with steaming fish. Carefully, he transferred it from plate to mouth. Chewing delicately, he turned his eyes upwards, then closed them, whiskers a twitch, jaws working steadily, munching away, his tail curled up, holding a napkin which neatly wiped his mouth. The abbot's eyes reopened. He beamed like the sun on midsummer morn. Quite wonderful, perfectly exquisite. Friar Hugo, you are truly my champion chef. Please serve our guests your master work. Any further speech was drowned by hearty cheers. So perhaps by now, perhaps you have all guessed that the theory I have in mind is about food. It is about food. That is another reason why it feels so sacred when we get together. It's that we are gathering and connecting with our loved ones, but it's also about what we do while we are together. Why we gather: to be nourished, to celebrate life, to eat, drink, and be merry, to practice gratitude, and to give thanks for all the blessings that we share together. And that passage may have reminded you of something else. I've got one more example, if you'll just indulge me. One more example similar to the last one. I imagine that more of you may have read this one than the last one. Let's see. This is also 2 slides. I'll read it for you. Just as the frying pan was hissing nicely, Peter and Mr. Beaver came in with the fish, which Mr. Beaver had already opened with his knife and cleaned out in the open air. You can think how good the new-caught fish smelled while they were frying it, and how the hungry children longed for it to be done, and how very much hungrier still they had become before Mr. Beaver said, "Now we're nearly ready." Susan drained the potatoes and put them all back in the empty pot to dry on the side of the range, while Lucy was helping Mrs. Beaver to dish up the trout. So that in a very few minutes, everyone was drawing up their stools and preparing to enjoy themselves. And here's the last part. There was a jug of creamy milk for the children and a great big lump of deep yellow butter in the middle of the table, from which everyone took as much as they wanted to go with their potatoes. And all the children thought, and I agree with them, that there's nothing to beat good freshwater fish if you eat it when it has been alive half an hour ago and has come out of the pan half a minute ago. And when they had finished the fish, Mrs. Beaver brought unexpectedly out of the oven a great and gloriously sticky marmalade roll, steaming hot, and at the same time moved the kettle onto the fire, so that when they had finished the marmalade roll, the tea was made and ready to be poured. And when each person had got his or her cup of tea, each person shoved back his or her stool so as to be able to lean against the wall and gave a long sigh of contentment. As some of you may have guessed, that passage is from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. So that was just some fun literature for us today. There's a common theme throughout children's literature and fantasy literature, this focus on gathering together, to share meals, to share special times, to give thanks for what we have. Now, oftentimes in these stories, of course, there's some kind of threat to the way of life we're giving thanks for, something that threatens the Shire or Narnia or Redwall, perhaps, right? It's also about the way of life that we are trying to protect. But it's about what we give thanks for most of all. Now, one other thing here, you might be asking yourself, one question that you might have, is what's with all the fish references? Why is everyone eating fish here? Well, I've got a theory for that too. So Brian Jacques and C.S. Lewis were both Christian authors, just as Tolkien was. Jacques was a Roman Catholic, so was Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis was a member of the Anglican Church. Both writers expressed their Christian faith through their books, albeit in different ways and with different storytelling devices. So, where might they have gotten the idea to have characters eating fish together in a meaningful way? Who could possibly have inspired them to put that into their stories? Well, it's just my theory, but of course, the Bible, the gospel, is full of these meaningful passages where Jesus and his followers are gathering together. They're giving thanks, they're dining together. And of course, what's usually the meal of choice? It's usually fish, right? Jesus feeding the 5,000, Jesus feeding the 4,000, Jesus making the disciples into fishers of people, Jesus having them cast their nets over the side of the boat to demonstrate the abundance of God's creation. Jesus roasting fish over an open fire as he talks to Peter in the closing passages of the Gospel of John. The examples of this are everywhere. So in the gospel tradition, in our church tradition, in our way of life, sharing a meal together. In the gospel, it's usually bread and fish, but it's an ongoing symbol for the eternal goodness of God. Jesus makes it clear that everyone is welcome at his table, as he repeatedly eats with sinners and outcasts from all walks of life. He's always eating in new ways with new people, gathering in new ways with new people, regardless of what the rules of the time said he should do. Because Jesus saw something sacred, not just in this practice of gathering, not just in this practice of sharing a meal together, but Jesus saw the sacred in the people he was gathering with. He knew that God is in everything, that he, the Christ, was and is in everything and everyone. The Apostle Paul understood this. It's a major theme of his ministry. Brian Jacques understood it, Tolkien understood it, and C.S. Lewis understood it too. When we gather together with someone over a sacred celebration, a Christmas dinner, a church service, a special meal, we are acknowledging that God has created and given all, and that Christ is in every morsel, every bite of fish, every person or mouse or child or woodland creature that is sitting at the table. And nearly all of Jesus' healing acts, by the way, happen shortly before or shortly after he has shared a meal with someone. And of course, at the end of his ministry, Jesus shares one final meal with his disciples, a meal which we remember today in the form of Holy Communion. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, there shall I be. Jesus comes to feed the hungry, to dine with us, to share the table with us, to show us how to gather together on every occasion, not just for Christmas dinner, but every time we wish to give thanks and share the blessings of peace. And as we all know, at the table of Jesus, there are always plenty of leftovers as well. Lots of fish and bread to go around. So we're just going to conclude today with our reading from Isaiah. We often spend a lot of time in Isaiah during Advent. This is the season of Advent. It's the season of the anticipated arrival of Christ in the world. And we're not done remembering our traditions just yet. So this is Isaiah chapter 11. A shoot will grow up from the stump of Jesse. A branch will sprout from his roots. The Lord's Spirit will rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of planning and strength, a spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. He will delight in fearing the Lord. He won't judge by appearances, nor decide by hearsay. He will judge the needy with righteousness and decide with equity for those who suffer in the land. He will strike the violent with the rod of his mouth. By the breath of his lips he will kill the wicked. Righteousness will be the belt around his hips, and faithfulness the belt around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the young goat. The calf and the young lion will feed together, and a little child will lead them. The cow and the bear will graze. Their young will lie down together, and a lion will eat straw like an ox. A nursing child will play over the snake's hole. Toddlers will reach right over the serpent's den. They won't harm or destroy anywhere on my holy mountain. The earth will surely be filled with the knowledge of the Lord, just as the water covers the sea. On that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations will seek him out, and his dwelling will be glorious. Well, it's a great promise found in the book of Isaiah. Christ will be a gathering place and a resting place for all. The Spirit that connects us with each other as we continue to gather in his name and share the peace of Christ. This Christmas and every Christmas from now on. Thanks be to God, and amen.